Are you ready? You ready for the message?
Yep.
Yeah.
You excited to be here? How many of you thought you were walking into Infinity War in 3D? Just stick around. It's all part of the show. This is what 3D looks like now. No, I'm just kidding. The most common way to define boredom in our culture doesn't work. The most common way that most of us define boredom is this: I am bored when I don't have anything to do. That's the most common way. It's a fair way to define boredom. Perhaps you could experience boredom because you don't have anything to do. Maybe that happens sometimes, but it's only fitting so far because many of us feel profoundly bored in our lives. Many of us feel chronically bored. Chronically, like there's just nothing really stimulating happening, nothing really very exciting happening. Like we're just busybodies, we just do things, we're just activity after activity, work, and then home, and then work again, and then weekend, and then work again. And it's just this sort of monotonous, moving thing. And maybe you're incredibly busy, but you still sort of experience this pervasive sense of boredom. This idea that boredom is not having anything to do doesn't work. It also doesn't work because in our culture, you have plenty to do. We have more to do than anybody in human history, right? We have access to more music, more entertainment, more movies, more activities, more communication, more information. We have more freedom right now at this particular place and time in human history than anybody ever has. We have, if the people of this area are wealthier than about 90% of the world, probably more like 95 or 96% of the world, that we're in that percentile of wealth. So we have more money, more freedom, more opportunities, more activities, and yet boredom is still this pervasive thing that we're all experiencing at some point or another. And boredom, as you've hopefully learned in this series, and if this is your first day with us, you're not going to miss out on anything. You can pick up right here with us today. But we have talked a lot about how boredom isn't exactly what we think it is. Boredom is a cause of depression and sadness. And boredom can actually feel like burnout. Like we've known people who would say, I can't be bored, I'm too busy to be bored. Well, burnout is actually a form of boredom. Whenever you feel like all I do is go, 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 I work, 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 work. Me and Rihanna, all we do, we work, work. We just keep moving, keep pressing. And that you might actually be bored in all of that because you're not exactly sure what your purpose is. And if you are sure what your purpose is, you're not exactly sure that you're operating in it, that you're moving in the direction of it, that what you do really aligns with what your purpose is. So we're in this teaching series talking about boredom. And here's what I want to do for today. So because this definition doesn't exactly work, because the idea of the most common definition, I'm bored because I don't have anything to do, because that doesn't work, we need a new definition. And for today, here's the definition I'm going to offer you. It's the first thing on your sermon notes. It's on the back of your worship guide. If you'd like to write, move along with us. We believe that kind of helps with some learning, so you can fill in these blanks. Plus, you don't want to go home with unfilled blanks, do you? What kind of day are you going to have with unfilled blanks on a sheet of paper? Boredom is what happens when your life doesn't have a plan. Boredom is not having anything to do. Boredom is not having a plan. Now, I know I've got free spirits in the room who are a little weighed down by that statement. You're like, wait a second, a plan? I don't want a regiment. Don't put me in a box, Drew. I'm with you, okay? I'm a free spirit too. Hippies unite, right? But I still think this is an important conversation for us to have. I still think that a plan is a necessary part of your life that in order to fight against boredom, to not let this become a part of our lives, we need a plan. And so I want to offer you some ideas to help create a plan, to help execute a plan today. We're going to look at Nehemiah. We've been in the book of Nehemiah, which is an Old Testament book. It's written about 500 years BC, is about whenever we discovered the book of Nehemiah. It used to be attached to the book of Ezra. If you're familiar with the Old Testament at all, it used to just be a footnote on the end of Ezra. There were these 15 or 16 chapters of Nehemiah that were just the end of Ezra. And somebody came along in around the 16th century AD and said, Nehemiah is good enough to have his own book, right? We just renamed it Nehemiah, didn't change any of the information there, just said we should talk about that as a separate person. And Nehemiah, in the first chapter of his book, introduces, this is my memoir, this is my life. I want to tell you about something specific that happened in my life where I discovered what my purpose actually was and I started acting in it. And what he discovers in chapter 1, and what we've been talking about for the first couple of weeks, is that his people, the Jewish people, have been oppressed and sort of ruled on every side because their city's walls have been torn down. So the Jewish people were once in charge of everything. They were once in control. They once ruled. And now they have no walls. And because they have no walls, they're vulnerable. And they're in a very dangerous place. And they're also humiliated. Imagine, the most powerful nation, the most powerful group of people on the planet lose all of their power, and now they've got a lot of people who are mad at them. In order for them to have become the most powerful people on the planet, they had to upset everybody else on the planet. They stepped on everybody else, and so they're in a lot of danger, and Nehemiah is approached about helping with this problem because Nehemiah is a Jewish man who works directly for the king as the king's cupbearer. So people come to him and they say, is there anything you could do? You got an ear with the king. Could you help us out? And so Nehemiah sets out to help out with that. And we're going to pick up in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1, where he tells us, early the following spring. Now that's noteworthy. I'm not going to spend this much time on every single statement that's made, but that's noteworthy because he was told months ago about the problem. And then it's not until the following spring, it's not until months later that Nehemiah does anything that looks like stepping in the direction of accomplishing the thing that he set out to accomplish. Make sense? And that's what we're talking about today. What happened in those months? And I think what we're going to see very clearly is over the course of time between Nehemiah deciding, here's what I'm here to do. Here's my purpose. Here's what I'm actually here for. And chapter 2, verse 1, Nehemiah comes up with a plan. So he doesn't just walk into this and say, oh, I got something to do, I'm going to go do it. He says, this is going to require a plan. This is a big thing. My life is a big thing, and it needs a plan. Early the following spring, in the month of Nisan, during the 20th year of King Artaxerxes' reign, I was serving the king his wine. He identifies a problem in chapter 1. He's been uniquely positioned and designed to address this problem with his life. He prays to God at the end of chapter 1 to grant him success in his pursuits, and then he generates these plans to accomplish that purpose. And so I want to give you 5 parts of a plan with a purpose today. That's what your notes are going to be for. So if you want to have those handy, I'm going to give you 5 parts. You may need all 5 today. You may just hear one of them and say, that was what I was missing. That was the thing, that's the question I need to be asking right now. That's the problem I need to be solving right now. That's the conversation I need to be having with my spouse or my closest friends. That's the part of this that I'm missing. Or you may say, all 5. I'm ready to start at number 1 and move through the whole thing. But here are the 5 parts. And the first one comes from the first thing he tells us that happens. Nehemiah said, I had never appeared sad in the king's presence. So he asked me, why are you so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. So part 1 of the plan is obviously passive aggression, right? You know what passive aggression, right? Don't tell them what the problem is. Just pretend you have a problem and they should know what it is. No, I'm just kidding. Can we stop with the passive aggression? That's not the plan. Don't write that down. If you wrote it down, scribble it out or circle it and draw a line through it. No more. The plan is no more passive aggression. The first thing, though, that he does is he appears sad in the king's presence. Part of Nehemiah's job is to look happy all the time. That's what the king wants. If he's got some depressed guy serving him wine all the time, he's just going to fire him and get somebody else. He can do whatever he wants. So part of Nehemiah's job is to pretend like he's happy even when he's not. To pretend like he's doing okay even when he's not. And so Nehemiah has this isn't to say Nehemiah was never sad before. He just said, I've never appeared sad before. This is a step he's taking intentionally. Instead of going straight to the king and saying, King, I got a problem, he just makes it known. Part 1 of the plan is actually this. 5 parts of a plan with a purpose. Number 1 is this. You got to get the necessary support. You're going to need the support of somebody in your plan. Nehemiah has an ear with the king, and he's a massively trusted ally of the king. But that doesn't mean they're friends, right? That doesn't mean he can just walk in there and say, here's what we need to do, king. You just make it happen. You know how to make it happen. Just make it happen. Right? No, he needs the king's support. When I was in college, I worked in billing for a hospital. And it was one of the largest employers in the area. And thousands of people worked there, and thousands of people wanted to work there. It was a great employer. And all of my friends in college, they would ask, like, can you get me a job there? Because I had a job there. And every time I was asked something like that, and maybe you're in a position like that in your job, every time I was asked, it was like, I'm pretty sure if I walked into my immediate much less HR, much less the CEO, like, if I walked into my immediate supervisor's office and said, I got a friend that maybe needs a job, that she might look at me and say, and who are you again? Like, you work for me? No. And this is the kind of situation that we see with Nehemiah, that he has an ear with the king, but that doesn't mean that he's got like a friendship with it. That doesn't mean he can just tell the king what to do. He needs his support. And so Nehemiah puts a plan in motion that starts the conversation without assuming that he has more authority than he really does. There's a humility to what he actually does here. Think about it. The plan hinges on Nehemiah using his proximity to the king to pull this off. If he gets fired, he's of no use. He can't do it. If he gets murdered on the spot, which absolutely could happen because he goes into the king and says, king, here's what you need to do, he's of no use. He can't walk in his purpose if he's dead, right? He can't walk in his purpose if he loses his job. And so he gets the necessary support from a humble place. He puts this plan in motion. He also, and this is a huge thing for us to consider whenever you're thinking about what is it that I'm trying to do with my life right now? What is it, maybe the changes that I need to make, or maybe I'm just trying to step a little more fully into who I truly am and who I've been called and created to be. Nehemiah doesn't assume that the king is going to be as excited about the plans as Nehemiah is. And you got to know that in your own life, with your own purpose, with your own dreams and the aspirations and the things that you want to accomplish with your life. Don't let this hurt your feelings. I love you very much. I care for you very deeply, and I love your plans, and I care about your plans. But nobody cares about your plans as much as you do. You just got to know that. Nobody thinks that what you're trying to do with your life is as important as you do. And there's a degree of humility that needs to come from that. Even the people who care about you the most, they don't see it as clearly as you do. If it's something that you want to make a major change in your life that's going to affect your family, you've got to understand you need your family's support to some degree to make that change, and they can't see it as clearly as you can. Make sense? Is this helpful? If it's not, we'll just move on. But I think that seeking the support of your spouse, your closest friends, your bosses, your parents, your children, mentors, investors, whatever it might be, you don't need everybody to see it exactly the way you do, but you do need a degree of humility in putting a plan in motion. You need some support from some people. You got to identify who are those people. Who are the people who support I really need? You don't need the full agreement of everyone. You'll never get that. Just some of the right support. Are you thinking of a career switch? Who else needs to be on board with that? Are you planning to help some people in need in our city? Are you planning to take some steps towards maybe a ministry or a nonprofit or trying to just make a difference in your own community? Whose help are you going to need in that? Whose support are you going to need in that? Are you trying to get into shape? Are you trying to get healthier? Who else needs to be on board with you for that? Who's going to help you with that? Does this make sense? We need some support if we're going to put a plan in motion. So I'm going to move on to the next one here. Who else needs to be on board? Then I was terrified, Nehemiah said. The king noticed, you must be deeply troubled. And so then I was terrified. But I replied, long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire. Number 2 is this, and this is such a huge thing. This is the stumbling block for so many of us when it comes to our purpose, when it comes to us living in boredom. Clarify the plan for others is the blank in number 2. After you've gained the support of the necessary people, you'll need to be able to articulate your plan. You'll be able to explain it to yourself and to other people. Many of us are profoundly bored in our lives. Many of us are chronically bored in our lives because we're not exactly sure what we're trying to accomplish with our lives, right? If I were to say, like, explain to me why you're here. Tell me your purpose. What is your purpose? That a lot of us kind of get nervous about that, and you're like, I don't know that I could really explain that. I don't know that I could articulate my purpose. I can tell you my job. I know what I do every day. I don't know why necessarily. I don't know that I would necessarily say, like, I'm here for that reason. Like, this is my purpose. This is why I was created, and this is a huge part of it. Clarifying the plan for others sort of forces us to articulate it, forces us to be able to explain it for our own sake and for others. This part of the process is necessary for our own understanding of what it is we're trying to accomplish. One of the most common causes of depression and anxiety and excessive stress and burnout comes from being bored is a lack of clarity about what it is that you want, or a lack of clarity about what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish with your life. And I'm someone who actually believes that God wants to do incredible things in your life and through your life and wants to do incredible things for you. I believe he loves you that much. And I would just encourage you to consider, like, if God came to you right now and said, I'm ready to do any 5 things that you want to do, like, what are the next 5 things you want to do? If there's nothing on that list, then I would say you're at risk for boredom. I would say you're at risk for getting into a depressed place or maybe a burnt out place if we couldn't articulate, we couldn't explain or clarify for somebody else, what is it I'm trying to do? If God came and said, hey, whatever you're trying to do, I want to help you do it right now. And you had to say, I hadn't really thought about what I'm trying to do in a while. And so I would just say this is an important part of the plan, is that we're able to clarify what is it that we're trying to accomplish. We have a tendency to allow dreams to pass for plans. And I would say this, and I hope this doesn't hurt your feelings, at least not in the wrong way. A dream is not a plan. Dreams are weird, right? Anybody dream? I had dreams before we, I'm just thinking of this. I had dreams before we started Risen. I didn't know the people who do the music here, Mark and Marcy, very well, that we just had sort of met like right before we started the church. And I had these dreams, a recurring dream, that Mark was going to get up and sing. He doesn't sing. He has a microphone that just doesn't even do anything. He just pretends to sing. I'm just kidding. That's how he communicates with the band. He's directing the band. But I had this recurring dream that Mark got up on the first day of our church and just started belting out off key and not singing, right at all, and like singing weird lyrics. And then he would like walked around the room, like walked to the back of the room playing his guitar and just singing and whatever. And it was our first day of the church. My parents were here and it was so, I had the recurring dream. And this is what dreams are like, right? Dreams are weird and they don't necessarily make any sense. And he hasn't done that yet. And so this is, dreams are not plans. Dreams are not planned. Dreams are weird. They're unclear. They're often impossible to execute. And I know you've got dreams for your life. I've got dreams for my life too. Here's the problem. Most of our dreams are probably the same. You dream of being a good person. I know that. You want to be a good person. You want to be a good wife, a good husband, a good, friend to people in need. You want to be good with money. You want to be generous. I know you got the same dreams as me. We're all essentially moving in the same direction. We want to be better at life and have a better life, right? Those are dreams. But our plans need to be different, and we need plans. We need to recognize there's a difference between a dream and a plan is something you can articulate. A dream is kind of ethereal. It's kind of otherworldly. It's like, a plan is this. If you say to me, I want to be a great man, a great friend, a great employee, a plan is this. How? Right? If I were to say to you, I want to be a great dad and a great husband and a great pastor, that's a dream. A plan is how. How am I going to do that? And you need a plan. Don't waste your life chasing a dream. Create a plan to make your dream a reality. It's the most un-Disney statement I've ever made. I'm not saying you shouldn't have dreams. I'm saying you need a plan if you're going to move in the direction of a dream. Dreams are too weird. They're too otherworldly. Verse 4, the king asked, how can I help you? With a prayer to the God of heaven, I replied, and here's what he says, if it pleases the king, and if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. Number 3 is this. Be ready to go to work. Be ready to go to work. Hopefully we saw this coming. It's fun talking about plans and dreams, but our plans really don't do much good for us if we're not ready to go to work. Right? Many of us kind of get hung up on the previous stage. Right? I would say most people have a difficult time articulating what it is you're actually trying to accomplish. We couldn't clarify the plan for others, and so that's the step that we really need to take. But as difficult as that stage is, it's every bit as difficult in the next stage. I'll maybe say it this way. It's really difficult to know what you need to do. That's a hard thing to figure out. It's also really difficult to do exactly what you need to do. Did anybody make a resolution to go to the gym 5 times a week for an hour a day? Right? Back in January, you're not going to admit it, are you? You're not going to say, yeah, I did say that, but I haven't yet, right? It's one thing to not know what it is we're trying to do, but it's another hurdle altogether to actually have to go to work, to actually have to say, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. It's very difficult to begin taking those steps in that direction. So what kind of step is it time to finally take? If you're willing to accept that, you're willing to say, all right, I want to plan with a purpose for my life. I want to do something significant with my life. I want to actually start making a difference. I don't want to end up bored. I don't want to end up burnt out and bored. I don't want to end up with nothing to do and bored. What kind of step is it finally time to take? And I would maybe even take this one step further. Is this too practical today? Am I giving too many just like, do I need to shout and scream and weep a little bit? I'll try. I'll try. Take this one step further. You will never change your life until you change something that you do every day. It's a John Maxwell quote, if you're familiar with the great writer on leadership and great leader himself. If you want to make some changes in your life, you want to see yourself living in your purpose, you want to begin operating in your purpose, you'll never change your life until you change something you do every day. So something needs to change tomorrow morning. Something that you want to become a better person, you want to be friendlier, you want to be healthier, happier, more caring, more intentional about everything. You got to change something you do every single day. Verse 6. Moving on, we'll get to number 4. The king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked, "How long will you be gone?" This is an interesting part of this. An interesting thing comes up next in this. "When will you return?" And I told him how long I would be gone. The king agreed to my request. And so number 4 is this, and this is the TED Talk portion of the sermon. Set deadlines. This is a powerful idea about your purpose. I'm going to tell you a little secret about your purpose. You know what's really tricky about living in your purpose? There are no deadlines. They're really, we make a big deal about decade birthdays. That's about as close as we get to deadlines, right? You're like, I want to do this by the time I'm 30. And then you turn 30 and you're like, well, 35. Like somewhere in my 30s, I wanted to accomplish that or become that. Well, 40's the new 30, right? And so this is but we got to set some deadlines. You got to set some actual boundaries, some actual parameters for when is this going to happen? When are we actually going to begin taking these steps? It's easy to treat the symptoms of boredom with distractions and procrastination. That could go on for years. We could have a plan. You could have the support that you need. You could have clarity about exactly what it is that you need to do, and nothing could ever change if you don't set some deadlines and say, all right, I'm going to do this now, right? I'm going to have this done by the end of the year. I'm going to do this by the end of the summer. These are, you need some deadlines, and not just the deadline. Like that's not just like there's a line at which I will be dead and I will no longer accomplish. Like, no, we need some deadlines that we set for ourselves. That's a really tricky thing about your purpose. Does this make sense? There's no deadline for your purpose. There's no I want to be a great husband. I want to start a great business. I want to do. There's no deadlines for that. Nobody's checking. Nobody's calling you up and saying, did you do it? They're just not going to. And if you've got friends like that, well then congratulations, right? Let me know who they are. And I want people like that in my life. You got to set some deadlines for yourself, and that's what Nehemiah is forced to do here. Nehemiah is approached with this question. He goes to the king and asks the king for support and asks the king to give him a leave of absence. And let him go, and the king's first question is, how long is it going to take? What's your deadline? How long is it going to take you to do what you're going to do with your life? This big thing that you're writing a memoir about. I heard you're writing a memoir, right? I heard that you're trying to do something significant, something powerful, profound with your life. How long is it going to take? What's your end game here? So you need a win. You need a win. Maybe you need a by win. Establish a by win. By when is this going to happen? Verse 7, and I'm going to get to the very last thing here. I also said to the king, if it pleases the king, let me have letters addressed to the governors of the province west of the Euphrates River, instructing them to give me to let me travel safely through their territories on the way to Judah. And please give me a letter addressed to Asaph, the manager of the king's florist. The king has that's Ranger Asaph, instructing him to give me timber. I will need it to make beams for the gates of the temple fortress, for the city walls, for a house for myself. And the king granted these requests because the gracious hand of God was on me. Do you see what has happened? Do you see what has happened between Nehemiah chapter 1 and chapter 2? Nehemiah came up with a plan, right? When the king says, I'm ready to do whatever you need me to do, what do you need me to do? Nehemiah doesn't say, I don't know, I hadn't thought about it. He says, I need a letter for this guy. I need a letter for that guy. I need you to give me this long of a leave of absence. I'm also going to build a house for myself in the process. Is that cool? Like he has, it's all written out. It's journaled out. He has these bullets of like, here's what I want to do. And he gets the support that he needs. He clarifies it. He knows exactly what it is he's trying to do, and he's ready to go to work. He's ready to hit it. He's got these deadlines in place. And the final thing that I want to offer you, and this is more of just clarifying than anything, and it's, but I do hope that you find something helpful in this. What we see with Nehemiah is sort of a task-oriented goal, and maybe you have more of trait-oriented plans for your life. But I would just suggest that we need to pick a task or a trait. The last part is an important part of clarifying just what page we're all on. Right? Nehemiah's plan revolves around a task. Maybe yours does too. Maybe there's something you're actually trying to accomplish right now. Maybe there's a season of your life you want to see some changes. You want to start something new. You want to start a family. You want to start a business. You want to move. You want to see this transition in your life. Maybe you just lost a job and you want to see a new job. Maybe it is a sort of task-oriented thing, and maybe your plan is more trait-oriented. You may be less concerned with accomplishing something specific right now at this particular season of your life, and more concerned with becoming someone specific in this season of your life. And the interesting thing about that, I think you have to sort of pick a lane. This is just honest counsel, right? You didn't ask for it, but I'm going to give it anyways. Just an honest advice. I think you have to sort of clarify, am I working on accomplishing something or becoming something? And I think either can work, but you got to know which you're working on. Does this make some sense? The interesting thing about this part of the process is that there really isn't a right or wrong way. If you focus your life on accomplishing amazing tasks that help people, that change people's lives for the good, that help people live their lives better, you will develop the right kind of traits in the process, right? You'll begin becoming the kind of person. If your life revolves around the task, revolves around accomplishing things that help people, that make the world a better place, that make Jesus known to people, well, then you'll become who you want to become in the process. And if your life on the other side is really focused completely about traits, developing who am I becoming, and the reason that I'm making this distinction is it's sort of a seasonal thing. There are going to be times in your life where the tasks are clear. There are going to be times in your life where you know I want to do this, 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 and this. If you're in your 20s, you're probably thinking, I want to do that. I have a list of things I want to accomplish. If you're in your 30s, you might. But at some point in life, there are seasons where we're just developing tasks. We're just like, I don't know how much more there is that I'm trying to accomplish. I just want to become someone that's remembered. I want to become someone who leaves a legacy of love, kindness, generosity. And so I just offering this as you got to pick sort of a lane. Begin to consider, which is this for you? It's important to know which. Does this make sense? Is this helpful today? We get the necessary support. We clarify our plan for others. We're ready to go to work. We set some deadlines, some parameters, some boundaries, some guardrails. And then we sort of ask this question, an overarching question about all of it. Is it a task that I'm working on or a trait? Now, I wanted to close today, and I didn't exactly plan this because it was a hard thing to plan. I just wanted to share why this message is so important to me and why this series is so important to me. I'm in a particular season of my life right now. I'm 31. My wife just turned 30 in December. We kind of are in that. We have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. We had a list of things that we wanted to do with our lives, right? A separate list when we were teenagers, and then we sort of merged lists whenever we got into our 20s, and those lists have become more and more tangled and more tied up together to where we just want to accomplish some things together. And a lot of the things on that list are represented by this room right now. A lot of what we hoped to accomplish with our lives, hoped to do with our lives, revolved around one day starting a church for people who really needed the kind of church that God called and created us to start. Right? Risen church for us, and I hate to make this all about, like, I don't think you're all called to start a church. I can only really speak from my own personal experience on this. You know, we wanted to do this, and we wanted to have some kids, and try to love them well, and try to be good parents to them, and we wanted to own a home one day. And, you know, there's a lot of American dream stuff that's just alive and well for us too, right? We want the same things that a lot of people want. We probably share a lot of the same goals and things. And we've entered into this season of life where we're looking back and seeing a lot of checked boxes. And maybe this is true for you too. Maybe you're in a season where you would say, I kind of have done a lot of the stuff that I really sort of meant to do. And perhaps boredom is so pervasive for us, and perhaps we're at such risk for it. Perhaps we experience depression at greater levels than any people in human history. But perhaps we are more lonely and more disconnected from each other and more disconnected from our true purposes than ever before, because so many of us have essentially arrived in a lot of ways in our lives. And I'm not saying that you would necessarily articulate it that directly. I'm just saying that maybe you've experienced something like that. And we've been challenged in this teaching series to have some conversations about, you know, we started the church and we're busier than we've ever been before. And we're operating a lot of ways in the things that we always said we wanted to do. And yet at times we felt more profoundly sad and depressed and bored than we ever have in our lives. It's just something that's happened. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying like worry about me and come and give me a hug after. Please don't. If you know me well enough to know that I don't need a hug, wonderful. And if you don't know me well enough to know that I don't want a hug, now you know. But I know you're coming, aren't you? Yeah, you're coming. That's going to give me more hugs than I've ever gotten. What have I done? I'm speaking from a place of, I want us to tackle this together. I want us to move forward in this together. I don't want us living lives that are so marked by the tasks that we hope to accomplish and the things that we end up accomplishing them and then looking back and saying, now what? But this has been a bit of a season of now what for us. And we wanted to wrestle with it with you. We wanted to bring it to you. We wanted to share. And Megan and I, we kind of write these messages together and we talk it out together a lot. And last week was something that I was really dealing with personally, this idea of prayer. This idea of like my communication with God had become so stale and so boring because I was just showing up and saying, God, I'm here again. I'm Pastor Drew, and if I don't spend some time with you, I'm going to feel weird on Sunday whenever I tell people they need to spend time with you. That's where it had gotten. That's what had happened. And then I felt like God was really starting to tell me, like, hey, you can just ask me for stuff. Like, you could just dream for some stuff and bring it to me. And so I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to let you know that I'm starting to pray for some really big things and starting to really ask for some really big things. And as we've begun to do that, we've seen really, I'm this guy, okay? And I'm sorry if you don't really think this way, but I've seen miracle after miracle after miracle begin to happen in my life. God has begun to show up and say, hey, if you want to fight for something, we'll fight for it together. You want something? Let's go get it. Let's do that with our lives. And so I want this so badly for those of us who live in this sort of relatively wealthy suburban culture, and we could get sucked into this life of like, I kind of accomplished everything that I could have ever hoped to accomplish. Got a good job, got plenty of money, got a nice house, all this stuff that people really spend their lives chasing. I did that, and then here we stand. I don't want that for us. I want our lives to mean something. I want us to live in purpose. I want us to wake up every day and say, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to make a difference. One of the visions of this church, the overarching, the most important thing I could ever encourage you to do is inviting people to a better life with Jesus. I think the most profound role that any of us could play anywhere in our lives is inviting other people to know Jesus. Inviting people wherever we are, wherever we go, inviting them to church where they could maybe experience Him in worship, inviting them into our homes, inviting them into our lives so that they could see the work that He's doing in us. That's central for us. I also believe that you've been put in positions that I could never go to. You've been put in places and you've got spots in your community, spots in your neighborhood, spots in your job that Megan and I will never go, that no pastor will ever go, no church leader. Well, you have opportunities to change people's lives, and I want to call you to it. I want to commission you to it. And not just so that you can become this human doing thing, but because I think that boredom is real. And I think it's powerful. And I think it's more dangerous than we often really recognize it as being.